Welcome, Thrive Church. We are so happy to have you here with us today. We welcome you to all of our campuses, New Britain, Torrington, Southington, Terryville, online, on TV, our podcast, wherever you are. We are so grateful to have you joining us. My name is Judah. I'm pastor here, and we are excited about some things that are coming up in the future. First off, many of you know that we have the 4 campuses, New Britain, Torrington, Southington, Terryville. But, as we've been evaluating things over the last year or so, we've noticed that one of our campuses had some really strong areas and another campus had some really strong areas. And we're like, if there was only a way that we could get this to mix up a little bit, it would be great. And so in a couple of weeks, we're actually going to be combining forces with our New Britain and our Southington campus, both joining into Southington. Yeah, it's exciting. So we'll be one less campus, but we will be more effective than ever. And I am excited to see what God has in store for that. So be praying for us in that transition and be inviting people as well. Also, next week is going to be Mother's Day. We're kicking off a brand new series called The 90s, where we're going to be taking a look at some of the chapters in Psalm 90. And so that's going to be next week. So if you are a mom, this is a great opportunity to drag your kids to church. And if you're a kid and you have a mom somewhere, this is an opportunity to invite her to come to church. But also, if you're a guy and, maybe you want to get involved some way, anybody that wants to get involved, what we're going to be doing next week is we're going to be collecting unopened diapers, and we're going to be donating them at each campus to local organizations that help mothers in need. So if you have some unopened diapers that you'd like to donate, or you want to go to the store and pick some up, bring them next week, and we're going to be distributing those in the following weeks after that. So this week, though, we are going to be concluding our series, Unexpected Jesus. And throughout this series, we're talking about some of the unexpected things that Jesus did after the resurrection. After the resurrection, he appeared to many people. He did a lot of things. And if you know anything about Jesus, his whole life and ministry was kind of defined by going against what people expected. And so some of the things, we've talked about over the last couple of weeks and the different times that he appeared to different people. But today we're talking specifically about failure. Okay, so let's be honest for a moment. Have you ever failed at anything? Raise your hand. All of our campuses. Okay, some of you are failing right now. You're not raising your hand, so congratulations. You can raise your hand too. We all fail at things. In fact, something I failed at many years ago, a lot of things, but one thing specifically is I decided for some reason, I've had a lot of interest, some reason I decided that I was going to have a new hobby, and that was going to be making medieval armor. Why? I don't know. I have a suit of armor, and I was like, I want to start making armor. I think I can do this. How hard could it be after all? And so I bought an anvil, and I bought some metal, and I bought a hammer, and I started making a breastplate. And after about 5 minutes, I realized this is not for me. It didn't take me long to realize that I didn't have what it takes, and I failed. And you know what? I never went back to it. Never. I sold the anvil, got rid of the stuff. I'm like, that's it. I'm not gonna do it. But there's things in life that we fail at that are kind of funny. But then there's other things that we fail at in life as well. And failure kind of does something to your identity, doesn't it? Like I can't call myself an armorer because it did something to my identity. It affects who you think you are. Now, you may be able to recover from a small mistake, or you can move past some embarrassment in life, but failure has a way of taking you out. And that's where we find Peter in this story today. We find him discouraged. We find Peter disappointed. We find him disoriented. Everything just kind of feels different. Jesus rose from the grave and he appears to several people, but everything just kind of feels different. They're not hanging out like they used to. He's not doing the miracles like they used to. And so Peter and several of the disciples, they're all gathered together, and they're not really sure what's going on. They're not sure what to do next. And so this is where we pick up the story in John chapter 21, verse 3. It says, Simon Peter said, I'm going fishing. I'm going fishing. Anyone like to go fishing in here? Okay, so several of you. So you can identify possibly with Peter. He says, I'm going fishing. We'll come too, they all said. So they went out in the boat, but they caught nothing all night. It kind of sounds harmless, right? They're just sitting around, kind of bored, not doing anything. Well, let's just go fishing. Sounds kind of harmless, but it's not really. Because see, Peter had seen the resurrection of Jesus. I mean, he went there and he walked into the tomb where the body had been laid. He actually saw the risen Christ. And after all of that, we see him in this moment. He's discouraged. And they're wondering, what's next? I know. Let's go fishing. Why? Wasn't because he just enjoyed fishing. We need to understand he wasn't just going out there just to wet a line, going out there just to have a good time with the guys on the water. No, he went out fishing because fishing was what he did before he was called by Jesus. That was his job. That was his occupation. He was a fisherman. And see, failure kind of makes you retreat into what you feel is familiar. What feels familiar to you makes you run back to the things that you're competent in, the things that make you feel comfortable, the things that you're confident about. In some ways, you can kind of imagine that he might have felt like the last 3 years were kind of lost years. I mean, he had been spending his whole life up until that point as a fisherman, assumed that he would be a fisherman for the rest of his life. But then this wandering teacher comes by, Jesus, and Peter falls in and becomes a disciple, and they're traveling all over, and everything seemed electric. It seemed like things were moving forward in a positive way, and now Jesus is alive, but does he even still need us anymore? We're not even really sure what our place is. Maybe those years were just lost, and it's time to go back fishing again. See in your notes, when we lose sight of Jesus, we tend to return to our old ways. When we lose sight of Jesus and what he's doing, we tend to go back to our old ways, kind of like we've let God down. See, the very first interaction that Jesus ever had with Peter and his brother Andrew was when they were fishing. And Jesus sees them fishing, and he calls them to become fishers of men. He says, follow me, and I will make you fishers of men. I'll make you my disciples. But now that they've lost hope, they kind of don't know what to do anymore. So they just return to what was familiar. No longer fishers of men, now simply fishers of fish. One of the most sad things that happened in Peter's life was the denial. See, Peter was carrying this with him and wondering, do I even have a place anymore? After all that I did, after denying Jesus, and we see that Jesus even predicted this in Matthew 26, verse 31. It says, on the way, Jesus told them, this is before the crucifixion. Jesus says, tonight all of you will desert me. For the scriptures say, God will strike the shepherd, and the sheep of the flock will be scattered. But after I've been raised from the dead, I will go ahead of you to Galilee and meet you there. Peter declared, even if everyone else deserts you, I will never desert you. Jesus replied, I tell you the truth, Peter. This very night, before the rooster crows, you will deny 3 times that you even know me. No, Peter insisted, even if I have to die with you, I will never deny you. And all the other disciples vowed the same. See, so these things are playing back through his mind. If you know the story, if you're familiar with it, you know that Peter did deny Jesus. Not 1 time, not 2 times, but 3 times denied even knowing him. People were asking him, aren't you one of his disciples? Don't you know him? And he denies it, even swears that he doesn't know the man. He must be thinking, surely there's no bouncing back from that. I mean, imagine how you would feel if a friend betrayed you, if a friend denied even knowing you. You might not want to have anything to do with them. You might not want to speak to them ever again. And that's certainly running through Peter's mind. He's like, what I did was just too bad. And Jesus even predicted it, and he still couldn't avoid it. What things in your life have you maybe returned to that Jesus freed you from? Peter is returning to the fishing, but there's times in our life that we return to things as well. Maybe it's an addiction. Maybe it's a sin. See, failure tells us you tried to be bold. You tried to be strong. You tried to do the right thing. You tried to be faithful. And look how that turned out. So Peter goes back to the boat. Hey guys, I'm going fishing. Anyone want to come? You're welcome to join me. See, failure, what it does is it whispers lies about our identity. Certainly, Peter was hearing in his own mind things like, you're not good enough. Jesus doesn't want to use you. See, in your notes, our failures often distort how we see ourselves. Maybe you've had failures in your life and you look back and it kind of defines who you are. We get our identity from those things. And here, Peter denied Jesus, denied him 3 times, denied him publicly by a fire. So now who is he after all of that? Is he a leader still? Or is he just a fraud? Is he still even a disciple of Jesus? Or just simply a failure? See, failure says you are what you did. But Jesus is about to confront the lie. In John 21, verse 4, they're out on the water. They're out there fishing. It says, at dawn, Jesus was standing on the beach, but the disciples couldn't see who he was. And I find this interesting because throughout this series, we've taken a look at a number of characters. Mary Magdalene and the people on the road to Emmaus, and several instances where people were encountering Jesus, but they didn't recognize him at first. And it says the disciples couldn't see who he was, and he called out, fellows, have you caught any fish? No, they replied. No. See, Peter's back in the boat, and Jesus is standing on the shore. Peter went back to the thing that he knew best. And here's the irony of it. He even was failing at that. Wasn't catching any fish. Like, this is all that he knew. Like, he knew how to catch fish, and he goes out, and they're all out there, spend all night out there, and don't catch a thing. I don't know if you've ever been fishing, if you've ever had a bad day of fishing, right? They say a bad day of fishing is, better than a good day of work. And I've had a number of those before. In fact, one time specifically for my dad's birthday, we both loved to fly fish. I decided I was going to hire a guide to take us out fly fishing on the Farmington River, and we were just going to have this great time with this renowned fly fisherman. We went out there, and the guide was just really, really good. In fact, he made us, lunch, and we ate lunch, and we fished, and he critiqued our technique, and he taught us all kinds of things. And guess how many fish we caught after all that money spent? 0 fish caught that day. Like, kind of a disappointment, but we had a great time still, right? We had a good time out there. But here, these people, they're professional fishermen. This is what they do for a living, and they caught nothing. And then Jesus gives them some advice, some good fishing advice, apparently. John 21, verse 6, it says, then he said, throw out your net on the right side of the boat, and you'll get some. I mean, what kind of logic is that? What kind of advice is that? I mean, they must be thinking, the water is the same on both sides of the boat. We've been fishing on both sides of the boat. We've been turning the boat around. We've been going in circles. We fished everywhere here. He says, no, throw it on the right side of the boat. So they did it. And they couldn't haul in the net because there were so many fish in it. John, in this moment, recognizes, wait a minute, that's Jesus. You know what clued him in? This is not the first time that this has happened. This had happened once before when they were out fishing and didn't catch anything. And a stranger said, cast your net on the other side of the boat. And they cast the net, and they were able to catch a large amount of fish. So John says, that's the Lord. That's Jesus. This happened 2 times. Now, when Peter realized that was Jesus, he didn't stay in the boat any longer. It says he threw his jacket on, jumped overboard, and swam to shore. It was about 100 yards, football field. That's how far he swam. Swam to shore. He doesn't calculate things. He doesn't think about it. He doesn't hesitate. He just jumps in the water. And it's interesting because his failure made him retreat, but now his recognition makes him dive in and head towards Jesus. It's also interesting to think about this, that this is not the first time that we hear of Peter stepping out of a boat. He stepped out of a boat one other time before. The first time was when Jesus came walking to them on the water in the storm. And Peter sees him. The first time, Peter asks, "Can I step out of the boat?" This time, he doesn't ask for permission. He just jumps in the water. He doesn't walk on the water, but he jumps in it. The first time, Peter ends up walking on the water, but he has a fear. There's the fear of the wind and fear of the storm and fear of the waves. The second time, there's also a fear, but a different fear. This time, it's a fear of failure. The first time, Peter stepped out and failed, right? He failed. He sank as he was on the water. This time, he steps out after a failure, and he steps out of the boat. In your notes, many people stop stepping out after failure, but God calls you to step out again. See, it would have been easy for Peter to just stay in the boat thinking, well, Jesus probably doesn't want to see me. He doesn't want to talk to me. But Peter jumped out of the boat. Peter is still, even in his sadness, even in his disappointment, he's still moving towards Jesus. The first time Peter stepped out of the boat, he stepped out in boldness, but he ended up sinking. The second time he steps out of the boat, he steps out in failure, but he ends up being restored, as we'll soon see. The first time Peter stepped out of the boat, he ended up needing to be rescued from the water. But the second time, he ends up needing to be rescued from his shame. But in both moments, Jesus was there. And then the rest of the guys, after Peter bails on them, they're still left in the boat. Like, we still got all this net of fish. So they pull in the fish. They count 153 fish. The empty nets they were throwing out all night kind of shows the human effort without God's intervention. But now they have these full nets, and it comes from them obeying the word of Jesus. But then an interesting detail that many can overlook is in John 21, verse 9. It says, when they got there, when they all got to shore, they found breakfast waiting for them. Imagine that, Jesus cooking breakfast for you. That'd be pretty cool, right? I mean, sounds like a pretty good, I bet it was good. I bet it was really good. Had to be. When they got there, they found breakfast waiting for them. Fish cooking over a charcoal fire and some bread. Kind of funny, isn't it? They're out there fishing. Jesus tells them to get fish. Jesus didn't need fish, right? Jesus already got fish. Like, we don't know where he got the fish, but he's already got fish. He's already cooking them. He's like, hey, guys, yeah, put the fish over there. I already got you some fish. Let's have breakfast. Let's have breakfast together. See, Jesus doesn't need your help to complete the mission, right? But he invites us to join into it. He invites us to play a part in it. Says he's there cooking it over a charcoal fire. And this part just fascinates me. It's just a small little thing, but there's only 2 times in the entire New Testament where this phrase charcoal fire is used. The first time it appears is in John 18, when Peter is standing next to a charcoal fire. Someone comes up to him and says, do you know Jesus? And he says, no. He says, do you know Jesus? No. Aren't you one of his followers? No, I don't even know him. The second time is here where Jesus is cooking fish over a charcoal fire. And I don't think that's accidental. We have a sense of smell that can trigger memories. In fact, they say it can trigger memories probably faster than anything else. And if you've ever had a charcoal fire, it has a distinctive smell to it. And I can only imagine that when Peter got a whiff of that, it immediately sends him back to that moment when he's denying Jesus. And he smells the smell of this charcoal fire. It's like deja vu. Experiencing something like, feeling like I've been here before. This seems very familiar. Jesus is kind of recreating the environment of one of Peter's worst moments. But he's not doing it to shame him. He's doing it to redeem him. And this is profound, because in your notes, Jesus doesn't erase your worst memory. He rewrites it. He rewrites it, and that's what he's in the process of doing, reframing the whole situation, rewriting it. See, Jesus begins to restore Peter's identity, not through condemnation, but through love. And sometimes we feel ourselves feeling like we're back at the start all over again, back to where we began. Well, what we can't do on our own, though, we can do with God. Sometimes we feel like life is going backwards, like we're moving backwards. But God uses those moments of reset, those moments where we feel like we're hit rock bottom, those moments of reflection, he uses these moments to recalibrate us. Then continuing on in verse 15, it says, after breakfast, Jesus asked Simon Peter, Simon, son of John, do you love me more than these? Yes, Lord, Peter replied. You know I love you. Then feed my lambs, Jesus told him. Do you notice what Jesus calls him? Calls him Simon. It's just a small little interesting thing. But see, Jesus knew him as Simon, but Jesus gave him a new name, and it was Peter, which is rock. It was, he was a leader. He was a rock. And that's what Jesus had nicknamed him, but now we see him calling him Simon. It's like he's going back to the foundation. It's like he's going back to when he first met him. Before he's bold, before he was a leader, even before he failed, he's calling him Simon. And he doesn't ask him, Simon, why did you deny me? He asks, do you love me? Because see, love determines our identity. It's not about performance. It's not about failure. It's about love. And we know that Peter denied knowing Jesus 3 times. And then we see in this chapter 3 times, Jesus asks him the question over and over again. Simon, do you love me? Yes, then feed my sheep. Simon, do you love me? And he gets frustrated on the 3rd time. He says, then feed my sheep. See, Jesus isn't asking him to humiliate him. He's asking him because he wants to bring healing. And each time Peter answers, yes, Lord, you know that I love you. Each time Jesus responds with feed my sheep. See, he's giving him an identity, but then he's giving him an assignment. In your notes, our identity comes before our assignment. See, our calling comes before the restoration. See, Jesus restores you, and then he calls you. The call still stands. The call that's on Peter's life still stands, and then Jesus says something stunning. He says something stunning in chapter 21, verse 19. The last half of the verse is, then Jesus told him, follow me. This is the first words that Jesus had ever spoken to Peter way back when they first met. Hey, Peter, follow me. And then after the nets and after all the miracles and after the denial and after the resurrection, it's still the same call. Peter, follow me. See, failure on Peter's part did not revoke the invitation. In your notes, your worst moment does not cancel your calling. And then it's kind of funny how this all transpires, because then Peter just jumps right into comparison. Like he almost doesn't even give it a moment to sit. He just jumps right into comparison because Jesus tells him, he's like, you're going to suffer for me. You're going to die for me. And then Peter just turns around to Jesus and says, well, what about John? What's going to happen to him? Right? It's like, give me the details about him. And it's kind of funny almost that he had just been restored, and then he immediately starts comparing himself to John. Because even restored people, we still struggle with comparison sometimes. But then in verse 22, Jesus replied, if I want him to remain alive until I return, what's that to you? So he's like, mind your own business, Peter. As for you, follow me. Underline that. As for you, follow me. And that's how the book ends. That's how the Gospel of John ends. Not with some fancy explanation, not with some big strategic plan, not even with comfort, really. It's just with a simple 2-word command. Follow me. Now, some of you in your life, you may be in a time of retreat where you're kind of pulling back. You've gone back to fishing, so to speak. You've gone back to the things that feel safe, that feel comfortable. Maybe you've gone back to other things, some life-controlling issues. You're back to the things that don't require courage. You're back to the things that don't require faith. And you've allowed your failure to define you. But Jesus is standing on the shore today. And he's not condemning you, and he's not shaming you, but he's simply calling to you and saying, follow me. He's not saying fix yourself and get your act together. He's not saying prove yourself. He's not saying act a certain way. He's simply saying, follow me. See, Peter could have stayed in the boat. He could have said, I blew it. I had my chance. I'm the last person Jesus wants to talk to. I'm disqualified. But when he heard that it was the Lord, he didn't wait. He jumped. He moved forward towards Jesus. And when he got to the shore, Jesus didn't lecture him. He simply gave him a calling to feed his sheep and to follow me. And the same words that started his story now restarted his future as well. Peter would go on about a week and a half later to preach on the day of Pentecost, and 3,000 people would give their lives to Jesus Christ, putting their faith and trust. He would be an influential leader in the early church, and he would end up dying a martyr's death. They wanted to crucify him. According to church history, he said, I can't even die the same way that my Lord did, so crucify me upside down. The man who denied Jesus became unshakable, not because he was strong, but because the call of God still stood on his life. In Jesus, he doesn't just forgive your past, but he reassigns your future. Now, I'm not asking you today if you failed, because you have, and I have. We all have. But I'm asking, will you retreat? Will you go backwards? Or will you follow Jesus? Because the call that began your story still stands today. And some of us, we've been living in the boat for far too long. We've been living in the safety for far too long. We've been living in comfort and complacency for far too long. We've allowed failure to define us for far too long. We've allowed mistakes to shrink us for far too long. We've allowed the bad season of life to define us for far too long. And we're telling ourselves, I've gone too far. And although your failure may have been real, and although your regret may feel heavy, it is not stronger than the power of Jesus Christ, the power of the risen Savior who brings forgiveness and he reassigns us. See, Jesus isn't standing on the shore asking you to explain yourself. He's not asking you to relive your worst moment. He's asking you, do you love me? And if your answer is yes, even if it's through tears, even if it's through shame, even if it's through doubt, then hear him say the words to you again, then follow me. So stop retreating. Stop comparing yourselves to others. Stop hiding behind the failures of yesterday and get out of the boat, because the risen Jesus is still calling us and he's saying, will you follow me? Let's pray. Well, God, we come to you now, and we choose to follow you in this moment. Lord, and we have some failures. We have some regrets and some shame. But God, we bring that to you now and say, if you can still use us, have your way. We want to be used by you. And if you're here today, and perhaps you're feeling distant from God, distant from the Creator who made you and loves you, then will you consider turning your life over to him? Scripture says that if you believe that God raised Jesus from the grave, and you declare that with your mouth, that you'll be saved. So if you believe that, won't you call on his name today and say, Jesus, you are my Lord. God, let us not settle for a life of complacency. Let us not give up on the calling that you've put in us. Let us not hold back from following you in every area of our life. Lord, we know that you are strong, that you are the God who forgives, the God who restores, the God who makes all things new. And so we invite you to make us new, bring restoration into our life, restore the calling, give us a future to serve you, to make a difference with our one and only life for you and for your kingdom. It's all for your glory, all for your honor. Have your way, and we will follow you in Jesus' name. Amen. Let's stand.